Hello, it's Rachel Kelly here. I'm the author of The Happy Kitchen, Good Mood Food with Alice Mackintosh, the nutritional therapist. And I wanted to share today some ideas of how to use food to help your mental health through this period. First of all, I just wanted to tell you how I first came across the importance of food myself. I have had a long battle with anxiety and depression. In my early 30s, I suffered two severe depressive episodes. The first one, I was hospitalized and suicidal. And second one, I was also suicidal, and that went on for the best part of 2 years. So I decided after those very severe periods to see if I could build my own mental health toolkit to look after myself. And if there were other ways I could help my anxiety and depression in addition to medication, and actually find a sort of more balanced approach. And what happened was about 4 or 5 years ago, I went to see my GP and she said, "How are you getting on?" And I said, "I'm good, but don't feel that great. And I'm doing my mindfulness and my exercise and my medication." And she said, as I was leaving, "Well, have you thought about happy foods?" And I was really electrified because I hadn't actually thought up to that point that food was linked to my mental health. And she really was the first person who made this link explicit. And she mentioned 3 happy foods. She said dark green leafy vegetables, oily fish, and dark chocolate. I thought, gosh, this is getting better and better. I really like dark chocolate. And I said, "Oh, please, could you tell me more about this? I'd love to know more." And she said, "Well, I can't really tell you much more because I'm not a nutritionist, and in the NHS, a GP only gets 7 or 8 hours of nutritional training, and you'd have to get some more expert help. So at this point, I teamed up with Alice. I went to see her and I said, "Look, these are my symptoms, my anxiety, my low mood, my insomnia." I was also, by that time, menopausal, and hormones were playing with my mood. And were there any dietary interventions, nutritional interventions that could help me? And we spent 4 years together. And in that period, we looked at all my different symptoms. We went through them all and we tried to find out what would help in terms of nutrition. And these were the sort of categories that we looked at. We looked at how to balance my energy, how to beat the blues, how to be nice and calm, more mental clarity, because actually when you're depressed and anxious, you don't think very straight, hormonal peace, sweet dreams, so that I would sleep a bit better, and also some thoughts about eating for comfort and how I could change my sort of psychological approach to food. So we put it all together in a cookbook called The Happy Kitchen, which includes about 150 nutritional studies and where we are on the science of what we know about the links between mood and food. So what I want to do today is just share with you my sort of 5 top tips, my 5 rules that I rely on, the 5 things which I think are most important if you want to add nutrition to your sort of mental health toolkit alongside other approaches to stay nice and calm and well. So my first rule, as it were, for good mood food is that healthy fats are my friends and that I should always remember number 3. So what do I mean by this? Well, there are 3 kinds of fats, 3s, 6s, and 9s. And in nutrition, we always want a balance between the 3. But it turns out that a lot of people on a high fat, high sugar, kind of classic Western diet are quite low in the omega-3s. And actually, we need to boost these omega-3s if we want to improve our mood. So what are these omega-3s? Well, they're the healthy fats, and we find them in oily fish, so things like tuna, mackerel, herring, salmon. That was why my GP mentioned oily fish as one of the 3 top happy foods. They're also in things like hemp seeds, if you're vegetarian. And what is it about them which is so important? Well, it seems as if they are anti-inflammatory. Now, this is a whole new understanding of depression and anxiety, which links it to inflammation. Psychiatrists are now talking about the inflamed mind. And it seems as if inflammation underpins a lot of illnesses. We know it underpins some of the autoimmune illnesses, but it also seems to underpin depression and anxiety. Professor Edward Bullmore is a key researcher on this. So why do these omega-3s help? Well, they reduce inflammation. There's also a very interesting study, if you want to look more into this topic of the importance of the omega-3s. King's College London, Dr. Carmine Pariante, he is supplementing with omega-3s people suffering from mild to moderate depression, not extreme depression like I had, but certainly mild to moderate depression, using supplementation with omega-3s, people who suffer compared to medication and a placebo, and he's having really good results using those omega-3s. So rule number one for a good mood food diet is more omega-3s. Either add more oily fish to your diet, or use supplementation if your mood is particularly low. Carmine would definitely recommend supplementation as one route, and it seems to be as effective as the eating the oily fish itself. Okay, so rule number two for good mood food. And this is about understanding the links between our mental health and our gut health or our digestive health. I think the way to understand this is that I think in the old days, it'd be fair to say we thought mental health was all in the brain. It was about hormone levels, serotonin levels in the brain, and we thought that's how antidepressants work. We still think serotonin is important, but increasingly we're realizing there's this whole body system rather than the brain on the one hand and the body on the other hand, as part of a very basic sort of dramatic fact I hadn't realized is that 90% of our serotonin is actually made in the gut. So the way to think of it is, as I say, rather than separate brain body, there's this kind of constant link between the two. The brain is linked to the gut by something called the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve sends as many messages up from the gut to our stomach, from our stomach up to our head, as from our head to our stomach. So what's the learning if you want to improve your mood? Well, we want to improve our gut health. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, there are a few steps. We want to increase the amount of probiotics and prebiotics that we eat to help the makeup of the microbiome, which means the bacteria and all the non-human part of microorganisms that live inside us. And the way I think about this is to remember what these two things are. We've got the probiotics. The O is like the O in yogurt, and that's in. Sammy, come on. Sorry about that. That was the dog. So the O in yogurt, that's the probiotics. You also get it in kimchi, sauerkraut, all those fermented foods that you've probably heard about. Actually quite fun at the moment to make them if you're at home. So that's the obiotics, probiotics, but the bacteria also need prebiotics. That's the stuff that they actually feed on. That is the dark green dark green vegetables that my GP mentioned. So that's the first rule: more probiotics and more prebiotics. The other way to improve your gut health is to eat a much more varied diet. Now, I find this a really positive way of thinking about good mood food. I think when we tell people to stop doing something, then we're naturally drawn to it. So if you tell people to cut stuff out, they naturally want more of it. But the nice thing about the good mood food approach to eating is it's actually about adding in variety. So if we look at our ancestors back on the savannah, wandering around, eating different fruits and berries, they actually ate a really wide variety of foods, probably around 150 different kinds of food each week. And we know this from anthropological studies of their stomach contents. Now, if you take the average person on a high-fat, high-sugar Western diet, they're probably only eating around 20 different kinds of food each week. So we want more variety. How do we do this? Well, I think thinking about your store cupboard and your freezer is the key to making the change. So if normally you might buy 3 or 4 tins of, say, tomatoes, then try and buy 3 or 4 different kinds of vegetables. If you would normally buy 3 or 4 packets of frozen peas, get 3 or 4 different kinds of frozen vegetables when you do your weekly shop. So that's the importance of variety. Now, why do these probiotics and the prebiotics and also having a more varied diet, why do they help our gut health? well, it's back to inflammation. Remember, we've established that with the omega-3s. This helps improve our gut health. And if we have a nice, calm digestive system, and because of this constant connection between our brain and our gut, we're likely to be more calm psychologically. Okay, so that's my second rule for good mood food. First rule, healthy fats. Second rule, improving our gut health. Now, my third rule is really what you might think of my sort of sticking plaster section, which is actually thinking of the sort of essential nutrients that you might be low on if you're suffering from anxiety and depression at this time, and what you can do to sort of, boost these particular nutrients where we found really good studies linking them to anxiety and depression. So the three I want to talk about are magnesium, the B vitamins, and vitamin D. So if you remember, my GP, when she mentioned her happy foods, she said dark chocolate, which I thought was such a nice one. The reason we want a bit more dark chocolate is it's a good source of magnesium. Now, magnesium regulates our response to stress, and we can find it in other things. It's also to be found in beans and nuts. You can find some magnesium in pulses, lentils, and a bit of, I think, as well. But dark chocolate is a good source. So that's the first sort of extra supplement where we found good studies, magnesium. The second is the B vitamins, and especially B12. B12 seems to affect brain chemicals that affect mood, and you can find it in chicken and beef. It's also present if you're not a vegetarian or vegan. It's also present in beans, pulses, lentils, mushrooms, marmite, and brown rice. So B12, another key nutrient that you might be low in if you're suffering from low mood and is worth boosting. And the third essential nutrient is vitamin D. So low doses of this sunshine vitamin have been linked with depression. You can get it in food, mushrooms and oily fish and egg yolk are all sources, but actually it's quite low amount in food, and your best bet is to make sure you try and sit by your window, put your head into the sunshine, obviously get out for your daily exercise, and if you can do that outside as much as you can, that is good for your vitamin D levels. So that's my third rule, the sticking plaster section, as it were, the three nutrients to keep an eye on if you're suffering from low mood or anxiety. Okay, so my fourth rule really is about how to have a nice, steady energy supply and how to think about food in this way. Because if you think about mood, we want to be nice and calm and steady. And one way to do that is to have a nice, calm, steady supply of food and not to have great mood swings that come from sugar highs and sugar lows. So how are we going to do this? Well, the first thing is to think in terms of slow carbs, not no carbs. So we want a nice, steady supply of carbohydrates, but not ones that will give us these sugar spikes, which can contribute to anxiety. So things, good substitutes for the white sugar and the white flour, which will give us these sugar spikes, which we want to avoid. So you might want to be thinking about things like coconut flour, quinoa flour, spelt flour, buckwheat flour instead of white flour for baking. And we've already mentioned the dark chocolate, so that would be a better substitute for milk or white chocolate. And then if you want to be using cacao or dates or almond butter, again, in baking instead of the high sugar sorts of ingredients, which will see sugar spikes. Now, why do we want to really watch these sugar spikes? Well, here's how I understand what happens when you have a sugary snack and why it affects your mood. So basically, if you have a sugary snack, and you can try this out next time you eat something very sugary, just see what happens to your mood. First of all, you get a sort of mood high with the rush of sugar. But actually, this can be followed very soon by a low, and that's obviously what we're trying to avoid. So the high happens because we have a sugary snack, we have a rush of insulin from our pancreas to mop up the sugar, but it's not a very precise process, especially if we've had a great dump of sugar, and the insulin tends to mop up all our sugar in our system by almost in overreaction to the sugar load. And then as a result, we have a sugar low. And then we want desperately to have some sugar. So very quickly we get these mood swings of the sugar highs and the sugar lows. And when we get these mood swings, we also get a stress response. So we get cortisol and adrenaline rushing through our body. So all the more reason to keep this idea of steady food as fuel, steady energy through the day, slow carbs, not no carbs, and to keep your sugar levels nice and calm and steady. All right, so that was rule number 4, keeping food as fuel and staying nice and calm and steady. And rule number 5 is much more sort of psychological, really, about your whole sort of attitude to food and how you might want to rethink it as a friend and as a way to help with your low mood and anxiety. And for me, this was just so important because I think many of us have quite a complicated relationship with food. We often treat it as a reward if we're feeling low. This is obviously particularly relevant if you do suffer from low mood. You know, you go and have a sugary snack because you're not feeling great. So I think for me, a lot of the learning and work I did with Alice was about changing this relationship with food into a much more sort of positive relationship. And it started really with the intention of why you're eating something in the first place. And I think if we bring a different intention to why we're eating, that can be really the start of this very positive journey. And the intention here, obviously, I think here is to think of food as our friend. It's something that can nurture us, support us, and look after our mental health as much as our physical health. And in terms of sort of trying to foster this new connection and think about food in this different way, I think some of the mindful eating techniques can be absolutely brilliant as a way of bringing this kind of new focus and sort of self-awareness to how we're eating. And what seems to happen with the people that I work with, I'm an ambassador for SANE and Rethink Mental Illness, and in our Good Mood Food workshops, this new approach is really the way this lovely journey gets started. And what's so great is we see results even within 1 week of people having a really different approach to food and a really different attitude. So I thought we could try out a mindful eating exercise together. I'm just going to give you a little moment, if you're not too far from the kitchen, if you could just find something small to eat. It could be a raisin, it could be a berry, it could be a grape, small piece of bread, anything at all. I'll just give you a moment to go and find something to eat, and then we'll try this mindful eating exercise together. And if you haven't got a moment to find something to eat, we could still kind of imagine this exercise, and maybe you can do it later when you've got some food. All right, and I want to say thank you to the wonderful John Kabat-Zinn and Mark Williams, who came up with some of these mindful eating ideas in their work on overcoming depression. All right, so assuming you've got your raisin or your blueberry by now, let's start with holding. First, take a raisin and hold it in the palm of your hand or between your finger and thumb. Focus on it. Imagine that you've dropped in from space and have never seen a raisin before. Now seeing. Take time to see it. Gaze at the raisin with care. Let your eyes explore it, examining how it catches the light, the darker colours, any patterns or unique features. Turn the raisin between your fingers, exploring its texture. Try it with your eyes closed. Now smelling. Hold the raisin beneath your nose, and with each inhalation, drink in any smell that may arise. Noticing as you do this, anything interesting that may be happening in your mouth or stomach. Placing. Now slowly bring the raisin up to your lips, noticing the movement of your arms and then your hands. Taste the raisin, but don't bite into it yet. Now tasting. When you are ready, have a bite. How does your mouth move? How does the raisin taste? How does it feel? How does it change? Now swallowing. Do you experience the intention to swallow before you follow through? See what that feels like. And now following. Finally, see if you can feel the raisin moving down to your stomach. How does your body feel? How does your mind feel? Think about how using this kind of mindful eating might change how you consume food at home, with others, or alone. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that experience. It might help you become more aware of the food that you eat and your effect on your mood. And I think this kind of self-awareness is absolutely key to starting on a good mood food journey. I really hope that some of those ideas that I've shared have helped you, may help you. They've helped me hugely. Nutrition isn't the only part of my toolkit. I still use many other techniques, gratitude being one of them. What we appreciate appreciates, but that can weave in to the good mood food journey too. We can appreciate food in a new way.